Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Right. So then the third method is watershed simulation. Right. This watershed simulation is used in all conceptual as well as in physically based models. That means you need to estimate this runoff. Then on the right hand side, either you measure it or you estimate it. Okay. So there are several components. I think we have seen it in our watershed water budget, right? So runoff is equal to precipitation minus evapotranspiration minus infiltration minus change in plus or minus change in storage, then plus and minus of groundwater inflow and outflow. Okay, so this is why this GO we have made it as a net groundwater. That means it is the difference between how much is contributed to the ground and groundwater and how much is taken from the groundwater. Okay, some of the researchers they consider this groundwater inflow is equal to groundwater outflow. So when your model or in real life, if the draft is more than the groundwater outflow, that is what we call it as depletion. Okay. So these are all the data required for rainfall runoff modeling. Right? As I said, apart from your infiltration, rainfall is the major input. Then we need soil characteristics, initial soil moisture, infiltration, groundwater. The number of parameters you go on adding, right? Then your model become more and more complex, but your results will be more and more accurate. But you need a good and sophisticated tool to solve that equations. Okay, so we will take one model which has started as a simple empirical model. Then now we are using this as the base in many physically based models, especially SWAT model, right? Soil water analysis tool, where that method is called as SCS curve number technique. But two basic models are, one is correlation, as I said, right? Correlation, I think everybody knows. Developing a relationship between rainfall and the runoff. Even our English formula is also, English and de Souza formula is also based on this. R is equal to AP plus B. Right? I think you know how to estimate the coefficients A and B. You can use method of least square or method of moments or method of likelihoods. These three methods are used to estimate the parameters in hydrology. But I think this is estimated using method of least square. Okay, so I have given a simple example. This is rainfall and this is runoff for 18 months I have given, right? 1 month 1 to month 18 rainfall and runoff. Draw a linear regression, right? So rainfall in x-axis, runoff in y-axis. Using method of least square, you fit a better straight line. The equation of this straight line is 0.38 times x minus 1.56. That means we'll substitute the value of rainfall as x and get runoff. See, this minus 1.556 doesn't mean that when rainfall is 0, runoff is minus 1.55. It may be groundwater flow or it may be a regression coefficient. So this holds good when x is certain threshold values or y is greater than 0. Okay, then only this equation is valid. Okay, this is simple linear regression. People have developed non-linear equations also, right? Like multilinear regression models. Instead of y is equal to mx plus c, you can use y is equal to m1 x1, then m2 x2, right? Multiple linear regression models. We are not going into the details, but this SCS core number technique we will go it in. It was developed by Soil Conservation Service. Now the name has changed. USDS method of rainfall runoff relationship or curve number technique, but the name of the method is still SES curve number technique. This was mainly developed, right, for small agricultural watersheds. They are all experimental agricultural watersheds. Then this was extended to urban catchments. Now we are using it even for large catchment by making this as part of a small agricultural watershed. Right? See, a large basin is nothing but is combination of small agricultural watershed. That means certain characteristics should be homogeneous. Once I can divide my entire large area into smaller and smaller homogeneous regions, I can still apply SCS curve number technique, right? So the data needed for this basic SCS curve number technique is nothing but the rainfall, type of soil and land use. And this method is derived based on the concept of reservoir operation. That means let the water storing capacity of the soil be S, or the maximum retention of the water in the soil. The runoff will start only when this reservoir or only when this S is maximum. So then the ratio between, right? So the actual soil, but the actual reservoir, actual soil moisture SA is rainfall minus whatever the initial abstracts and the runoff. Okay, so this is actual. But what is S? It is the maximum storage. Actual storage is P minus IA minus R. Similarly, let R be the actual runoff. P minus IA is potential runoff. Then the hypothesis of SCS curve number technique is that the ratio of actual and potential soil moisture is equal to the ratio of actual and potential runoff, right? So what is actual moisture retained, right? It is nothing but P minus initial abstraction minus R, where R is the actual runoff, P is the measured rainfall and IA is the initial abstract, and divided by the potential moisture is S, and this is equal to what is the actual runoff? R. Potential runoff is P minus IA. These two ratios should be equal. So in all these equations, the only unknown is R. But what is this S? S is nothing but the maximum soil moisture condition. So, and the second one is IA. I need to measure the IA. On the other hand, researchers have assumed that this initial abstract can be of three categories. One is 0.2 times of S or 0.3 times of S. Then substituting this IA as 0.2 times of S, my runoff is equal to P minus 0.2 S square divided by P plus 0.8 S. This is the basic equation. We used to use it in our SCS curve number technique. So here the measured value is P and the unknown value is S. That is the maximum potential soil moisture that can be retained in a given soil, which is function of type of soil and its land use. And based on several experiments, right? Several experiments, they have given a relationship between the type of soil, that is A, B, C, D, is 4 types of soil by USGS, that is having lowest runoff potential, moderate runoff potential, high runoff potential, very high runoff potential. That is A to B, right? For these 4 types of soil type and for different land use, they have given a number which varies from maybe 0 to 100. But in this case, you can find from a minimum value of some 70, 60 to 95, right? And they call this number as curve number, right? And this table was the first table prepared by the researchers based on conducting experiment on small agricultural watershed and then later on urban water catchment. Assuming that initial abstract is 0.2 times of S. Same land use, same soil type, there is another table which considers Ia as 0.3 times of S, these curve number values are different, right? So that is what we say that antecedent soil moisture condition 1, 2 and 3. This is 0.2 is for average condition. Okay. Now let us see what is this curve number. So initially they used this curve number to draw this type of figure. You can see here rainfall and this is direct runoff. For different curve numbers they have given a relationship. Initially it starts with highly nonlinear and then as the curve number increases the relationship becomes straight line or linear relationship. But now mathematical regression equations, if I know this curve number, that means I know what is the soil type, right, and what is the land use, then I can pick up a particular number as the curve number. Then substitute that curve number in this equation to estimate the potential soil moisture, right? So if I use in FPS system, this one nowadays we are using it only in SI units. So soil moisture, maximum soil moisture is equal to 25400 by curve number minus 254 when I use rainfall and runoff in mm. So when I know the Cn, I can estimate C, S, substitute the S here, then we can find out what is the runoff. Suppose if in a basin you cannot expect a uniform soil type or a uniform land use, then it will be a mixture. Then what we can do? We can do a weighted average curve number. For example, if I have an area which has soil type A and B and the land use is cultivated land to open plots, then pick up this, multiply with that area of cultivated land plus pick up this curve number, multiply with the area of this open space, add these two, divide it by the total area. That will give you the weighted average curve number, right? Let us do one small problem on this, right? So you take your calculators and pen, please do it. You can determine the runoff from a watershed of 60 hectares. 1 hectare is equal to 10,000 meters square. So there my rainfall is 100 mm. Then I have two soil type B and C and two land use. One is row crop without conservation, that is 40 hectares. Okay, row crop. The second one is woodland good condition, that is 20 hectares but soil type B. So what we have to do, first we have to estimate the curve number. To estimate the curve number, go to this table. First you have to write, since we have only this table of Ia is equal to 0.2 S. So this runoff is estimated based on the assumption that Ia initial abstract is 0.2 times of S. Then you can use this table. The first one is soil type C, right? This is soil type C and it is written as row crops, right? There is the row crops, right? Cultivated land, right? So this is the cultivated land without conservation and treatment. So the curve number is 82. So I am writing down it as 82. The second one is woodland. But what is the soil type? Soil type is B and it is woodland. Go to this woodland, right? Soil type is B and it is in good condition. The curve number is 55. So we have picked up two curve numbers, one is 82 and 55. But this 40 hectare is only for row crop, which has curve number 82. Woodland is 20 hectares. So you multiply this curve number with the area, divided by total area. My curve number is now 73. Substitute this in the soil moisture potential equation. My S is 93.7, 93.9. Substitute this in the runoff estimation. You will get 37.7 mm. Right? Now from this rainfall and runoff, you can estimate what is the rainfall runoff coefficient. So now what is the runoff? 37.7 mm. And what is the rainfall? It is 100 mm. So 37.7 divided by 100, 0.377 is the rainfall runoff coefficient. So this is how the basic SCS curve number technique is used to estimate the runoff. But in this case, we have used weighted time. But nowadays, in distribution model, we also see that introduction about SWAT model. By using this SWAT model, I can do a distributed model, or they call it as semi-distributed model. Instead of using a finite difference or finite element model, here what I do is I group a catchment area having similar catchment characteristics, soil type, infiltration type, right, rainfall, temperature, everything, and call that as one hydrologic response unit, HRU. So it's a homogeneous. I can easily find out what is its curve number, substitute that curve number in this, estimate the runoff in that. But if my area is larger and larger, I cannot estimate runoff here and add just like that. There will be a time taken by the water to move from this upstream farthermost and join with the lower edge. So then I have to consider this time delay also in estimating the runoff. That is called semi-distributed hydrological modeling, right? But in hydrology, we have seen only this. I am giving a complete picture on types of models used in hydrology, right? So the left hand side, it is based on what classification, and in right hand side, it is what actually. So based on physical process, as I said, I can use an empirical model, physical model, conceptual model, and now data-based models. Then depending upon what type of values I am giving as the input for these models, it may be a deterministic model, probabilistic model, stochastic model, or fuzzy model. Then my time series, right, my observed data, its characteristics are not varying. Characteristics means the statistical characteristics are not varying with the increase in time period. Suppose if I have data for 20 years, I have estimated the statistical characteristics, first moment, second moment, third moment, and fourth moment. That is average, standard deviation, skewness, and kurtosis. Right, it is some values. Then suddenly I had another data of 20 years of same station. Now if I estimate the statistics 4 moments of the remaining 20 years, these two, first 20 years and last 20 years are same, then I call that data as a stationary time series. If they are varying, then I call that as a non-stationary time series. I'm just telling a crude way, but you can divide the data into 3 equal parts, estimate the statistical. That is one statistical method, but nowadays we have several methods to check whether the data is stationary or non-stationary. That is based on the process. Then based upon the space, it can be classified as lump, semi-distributed, and fully distributed, right? Lumped model means whatever the data, right? Like I said, average rainfall. You have 5 stations, do a Thiessen-Polygon method or isoidal method, estimate that rainfall, average rainfall, and runoff, do a correlation. That is a lumped model. Or what I can do is I can give same rainfall observed as it is as the input to my model, and then regress it with the runoff. Means I am not lumping anything, either space or time. Then such models are called as distributed model. Depending upon the relationship between input and output, or among the input, my model can be linear model or non-linear model, right? And then depending upon the time step I am using in my model, that means I can predict every day what is the rainfall or every day what is the runoff. Then that becomes a time based hydrological model. Or I can predict what happens only for peak discharge, that means flood. You are looking for a particular event to model, then such models are called as event based models. And then I can estimate runoff at one site or runoff at two sites simultaneously. Then such models are called single site and a multi-site. Single variate and multivariate, right? How many variables I am using to predict the output, right? sometimes there is a confusion. I use the previous time stepped runoff to predict the runoff. If I use 5 times, so it is a multiple variables. It doesn't mean a multi-variable. It's a single variable only. You are using multi-time step. Okay, it means you use different processes to predict another process. That is what multivariate is. So these are all some of the models. But unfortunately, in hydrology, we cannot use a single model. It should be a combination of several models to predict a runoff. For example, if I want to predict the runoff at a dam, so that is single site. So it is a single site, single variable, time-based, linear, lumped, stationary, deterministic, conceptual model. Or it may be single site, single variate, time-based, linear, lumped, stationary, probabilistic, conceptual, like that. So I can have several combinations. But which method is the best one? That depends upon the available data and the accuracy you are expecting from your hydrological model. Okay, so these are all various models developed, applied successfully in the field of hydrology to predict each and every hydrological processes. We are talking only about rainfall and runoff. There are several conceptual models to predict evaporation, evapotranspiration, right? So all hydrological processes, this is the concept of models. Okay, so I think I have given some example. What is the name of that model, right? As I said, I think we can. This is stochastic conceptual model. That is Nash model. Then stochastic empirical model, right? ARMA, RIMA, UH. They are all by least square. Then deterministic conceptual models. Many groundwater flow, right? Darcy's law. They are all deterministic, but they are based on certain concept. Right? Darcy's law, right? You use Darcy's. You might have studied Darcy's law, right? That is groundwater flow equation, a deterministic concept. Then deterministic empirical model, like Kulandeswamy model, who was my teacher, right? When I was studying. Kulandeswamy model, IUH by harmonics. They are all deterministic empirical models, right? So these are all different types of hydrological model, and when you take up this as your major master's degree, you will study that models in detail. But now as an undergraduate student, you know what are all the different types of models available in hydrology. Then next comes to your mind is why I need to do all this analysis, right? Why I need to do all this analysis? One of the major requirement for this analysis is to fix the capacity of the reservoir, right? I think we will study in detail about this reservoir in water resource engineering, right? That's what I said. These certain components are inseparable between hydrologists and water resource engineers, right? For example, I am giving you a definition of all these reservoirs, right? It's an annual demand of water in a particular site may be less than the total inflow, but the time distribution demand may not match the time distribution. So that means why we are constructing a reservoir. That means I need to store the water in one location to distribute this when there is no inflow, right? So that is what we call it as a reservoir. It is a storage structure that stores water during the period of excess flow and use it during non-monsoon season. It enables smooth regulation of available water. That means it reduces the spatial and temporal water availability. Okay. Then very important is how much water I need to store. Is it 75% dependable inflow? Then if I don't have demand at the downstream side, unnecessarily I have constructed very big dam. If it is only 50%, then or 90%, then I may not be able to meet my downstream requirements. How to fix the capacity of the reservoir based on two important data. One is supply, the other one is demand. Supply is what, how much water is flowing in the stream over the period of time. Demand is how much is needed in the downstream side, right? That is my live storage. Fix the live storage, we use this, right? I will give you a small example. See, this is the cross section of the dam. There are three important storages that we will study in detail when we are studying dam and reservoir engineering. Right? One is called dead storage, another one is called as active storage or useful storage. The last one is called as flood storage. Charcha storage is nothing but the storage which is stored during the surplus period. Right? Out of all these periods, the active storage estimation, this is what you are going to use it in your downstream side for human development. That is also called as active storage or live storage or useful storage. So this method of this observed data is used to estimate this active storage. Dead storage is based upon the measured sediment that we will see it later. Flood storage is based on unnecessarily when there is a heavy flow, how to store it. That is going to be seen in the next chapter. Okay. So these three we are going to estimate this active storage, and it was developed by Ripple in 1883, and we are still using this, and that is called as Ripple diagram. It is based on double mass. Actually it is two curves. First one is you have an observed data, observed flow in every month or every year, right? You have observed demand every month. Now you estimate the cumulative values, right? You estimate the cumulative value and plot the accumulated volume of runoff or the stream flow and accumulated demand. But when we are starting drawing of this demand line, it should not start from the origin. It has to start from one of the peak of these values, like either at these C points. Then these two will match, and the difference between this supply and demand line gives you the volume of live storage. Suppose in this case I have two peaks, right? C1, C2. So I am drawing my demand curve from cumulative demand from this C as well as from this C. Now the maximum difference between my cumulative supply and cumulative demand S1 or S2 at this point. Whichever is maximum, that much storage I can keep to meet my demands without deficit, right? I have given a small example to solve and find the capacity of the reservoir using your Ripple diagram, right? So this is monthly, right? January to December. My mean flow is meter cube per day. Convert this into meter cube per month, right? That means cumulative into 24 into 31 or 28 depending upon the month. Then this is my monthly. You can take your calculator and check one value. Okay, 16 meter cube per day. I think these two values are interchanged. We will check up this later. So then you estimate the mean inflow, convert that into volume per month, and then demand. Find out the cumulative flow and cumulative demand. So the blue curve is the cumulative inflow, and red curve, you see, I am not starting this from the origin. I am starting it from this peak and then drawing it. Then it crosses my inflow. Then only we have to find out this vertical difference. Suppose if this red curve is not at all crossing another cumulative peak, that means the solution is unbounded. You cannot find out a storage which will never reduce your deficit. Okay, so this is called Ripple diagram of estimating the reservoir capacity. The another method is the month flow demand. Then find out what is the difference between the volume of supply and demand, right? The difference, if it is positive, it is surplus. If it is negative, we call that as deficit, right? For example, the volume in March month flow is only 3,90,000. So 39 lakhs, whereas demand is 44 lakhs. So the difference is this much volume. Then you estimate the cumulative surplus separately for each cumulative and then cumulative deficit. The maximum of cumulative deficit is the capacity of the reservoir. This is a tabular method. This has ruled the world for almost several years. Most of the dam capacities are based on this one. Later on, as the length of the data available is more and more, right? Then they estimated another method called as, or they discovered another method called as sequent peak algorithm, right? Sequent peak algorithm is nothing but like this. Now you have this surplus deficit, you find the cumulative. If it is positive, you go on adding. If it is negative, you go on reducing. That means I have an increasing cumulative as well as decreasing cumulative. So far in mathematics, you might have seen cumulative means the values are in positive cumulative. Values are increasing. It may not reduce, but it may be constant. But in this case, because of negative values, increases, decreases, increases and decreases. Then find out what is the peaks, right? Sequent peaks and sequent troughs. The difference between the peak and the sequent trough is the estimated storage of a reservoir. Okay, this is called the sequent peak algorithm. So for example, in this case, lowest trough is T1, sequent peak P2. So the difference between P3 and T2 and P3 and T1, P1 and this one will, the origin will give you the maximum value is the live storage of the capacity of just reservoir. Okay, so these are all about fixing the reservoir. Now the next topic which we are going to study is drought and flood, but flood I will take in the next class. This class we are going to just look only one page on the drought. I am not going into the detail of the drought. Drought means when the amount of rainfall, there are different types of drought as it is written: meteorological drought, hydrological drought, right? Agricultural drought and economic drought. Meteorological drought means every year I have observed my rainfall, and in one particular year, so I take 30 years and take the average, that is called as normal rainfall. In a particular year, if the rainfall is less than 25% of that normal rainfall, then we call that as a drought period. If that percentage is in between 40 to 75%, then we call that as a severe drought. Okay, so that is called as meteorological drought. I think this is normal, this is slight drought if rainfall is 75% of normal rainfall. Severe drought if rainfall is 40 to 75% of normal rainfall. Hydrological drought, there may be less rainfall, but still I have sufficient amount of surface water in the lakes and reservoirs and in aquifers, then we don't call that as a hydrological drought. When we call the hydrological drought, when there is no water in the lakes and reservoirs as well as in the aquifers, then I call that as an hydrological drought. Agricultural drought is when the soil moisture, right, after the rainfall, there should be a sufficient increase in the soil moisture. If that soil moisture has not increased, even with the adequate amount, agricultural drought. Economic drought is I have not received sufficient amount of money then for the products which I have produced, then that is called as economic drought. Okay, so in this case I have two more slides. One is self-study, solve all the problems given in this section. Then other techniques of stream flow measurements like electromagnetic method, ultrasonic method, and in indirect methods, flow measuring structures. I request everyone to go back to your hydraulic lab records, right? And you see how you have estimated the discharge. Okay, that is called flow measuring structures. And then next one is slope area method, which is based on the fundamentals of your hydraulic engineering, right? So this is I give it to you as a self-study, and the current research, right, almost several topics are going on in this research, right? Especially finding a new sophisticated instrument to measure the stream flow, quick and easy method. Then application of soft computing techniques in rating the curve, in extrapolating the stage discharge relationship or the rating curve parameter estimation, and then modeling the rainfall runoff relationship, right, using conceptual model, empirical model, semi-distributed model, lumped model, right, fully distributed model. These are all the current research going on in this area, right? And also predicting the drought and mitigating. These are all some of the research topic. So I am closing the class today here.